Hi, everybody. Um, I bought my first Instant Pot about a year and a half ago and was instantly overwhelmed with the change in cooking that I was able to do. And so I have been doing some cooking classes through OLLI, the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, and I just finished a 6-week course with them, teaching them. And I know a number of my students are actually in the audience because I saw them logging in. So I'm very excited that they're there. And so what I'd like to do today is make these two recipes for you, and at the same time answer any of your questions that you might have, and because there'll be some lulls in between the cooking and so on, and give you some tips and tricks for using your Instant Pot. For a lot of people who were in my class, that Instant Pot had just been sitting on the shelf since their grandchild or child had bought it for them, or their cousins had bought it for them, and they didn't know what to do with it. And at the end of the 6 weeks, people were cooking like crazy. So I'm hoping that you'll enjoy the class today. And again, if you have any questions about the equipment or which Instant Pot to buy, I'll go over some of the features of each of the sizes and so on and so forth. These are both traditional Instant Pot brand Instant Pots. There are other manufacturers that are out there. I can't really help you with that. The settings are different on some of them. I just find that these are really terrific and that I highly recommend using them. They come in 3 different sizes. They come in a 3-quart, a 6-quart, and an 8-quart. These are both 6-quart Instant Pots. And the reason I recommend the 6-quart is because most of the recipes that are out there, including the recipe that I provided to you on the website, is set up for the 6-quart. And there are some books out there for the 3-quart, but I find having to increase or decrease the quantities of food can be problematic from time to time. So we're going to get started without further ado. We're going to do at the similar time, almost at the same time, but I'm going to move back and forth. I'm going to do the onion soup over here and the risotto here. The risotto takes a lot less time. And for those of you who have spent 4 or 5 hours standing over a hot pot, the cooking time on the risotto is 4 minutes. So I think you'll find that it turns out a really good risotto with actually barely a stir. So I'm going to get started with the onion soup. That takes a fair amount of time to cook. The onion soup is basically just onions, beef stock, wine. There's a little brown sugar, and then at the end we're going to finish it off with some Gruyere cheese and some little toast. And I'm going to pop this in the broiler, and we're good to go. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to get the onions cooking, and they have to turn nice and brown and caramelized. So we're going to get that started first. So on the Instant Pot, there are a couple of settings here for cooking. The one that we're going to be using right now is called Saute. It's right down here. I'm just going to turn it on. And what that is going to do is it's going to start the Instant Pot. The Instant Pot does not have a heating coil on the bottom. It's induction cooking. And so what happens is a magnet sends magnetic pulses back and forth into the stainless steel bottom, and that heats the pot up. And it's very exact, and it can maintain a temperature very well. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I've turned the saute function on. I've set it to more, and it's on right now. It's going to start to heat up. I'm going to put some butter in just a minute. I just want to bring my paperwork here so that I don't get lost. And so we're going to let that heat up for a minute. I have 2 of the 3 onions already cut up. and here, but I wanted to cut up the last onion because I wanted to show you how to slice onions for the Instant Pot. Onions basically disintegrate in the Instant Pot, or tend to disintegrate. And so cutting up of the onions is not as important to be as exacting as you would if you wanted to do another dish. So in the Instant Pot, the vast majority of the onions are just going to simply disintegrate under the pressure. So these are two onions. And so now what I'm going to do is cut the third onion. And what you're going to do is just take the top off and the bottom off. And then from here, just grab a little bit off the bottom here. So what you're going to do is, this is the bottom of the onion right here. We're just going to cut it straight through like that. And then I'm just simply going to slice the onion straight down. That's all that needs to be done. And so again, with the half of the onion, you always put your fingers back this way. And so that's all there is for the onions to cut them. You don't have to be more exacting than that. Again, the vast majority of the onions are just simply going to disintegrate. At the same time, I'm going to throw 2 tablespoons of butter. Oh, someone didn't take the wrapper off. That would have been untasty. There we go. So now the butter is starting to melt. It's also important that when you use the Instant Pot, you only use plastic utensils. Don't use metal utensils. The pot is steel, but what ends up happening is you'll end up scratching the bottom of the pot. So you really want to make sure that you're using plastic utensils for this. Once the butter completely melts, I'm just going to throw the onions in. And I know it looks like a lot, but as I said, a lot of it disintegrates and cooks down. So it's really not a problem. So, and now I'm going to put the brown sugar in here. It's just a tablespoon, so it's not a lot. And so what you want to do now is you want to make sure that the onions are being stirred around so that they all get oil on them, and that you break up the brown sugar. Although even if there are lumps with the brown sugar, while you're cooking, there's so much pressure inside the pot that any clumps will break down as well. So this is going to cook for about 10 minutes, and we're going to continue to talk as we're doing it. Do we have any questions yet? We do. I knew we'd have questions already.
Yes, we do have a question. So the first question is, someone has their mushrooms dried and whole, and she's wondering if she should reconstitute them and slice them, or just put them in whole and dried.
If that's for the porcini mushrooms, they go in whole and dry. The other thing that goes in without rinsing, which is really most people would think twice about, is on the arborio rice. You're not going to rinse the rice. You don't want to get this. You don't want to rinse the starch out. So the rice is going to go straight into the risotto. Okay.
Rob, what if they have a different kind of mushroom other than the porcini? Does it the same rule or something different?
As far as the dried, yeah, whatever it is, if they're shiitakes or whatever they are, they go in. Trust me, the time that it's in there, they'll soften up and everything will go great.
If they're dried, correct?
If they're dried.
Okay.
I actually used 3 ounces of the of just brown mushrooms, which are fine. I find that when I made it with the porcini mushrooms, it gave a great flavor. But even when I sliced it up into small pieces, there wasn't enough in there to make me feel like I was eating a mushroom risotto. So I used the sliced brown mushrooms, but I think the flavor of the porcini one is actually a little better. Okay, so again, we're continuing to cook the onions down, and we're going to get started soon on the risotto. But I just want to go over some of the functions of the Instant Pot. So right now we're using the saute function, and the saute function is just like a hot pan that you'd put on the stove, on an induction burner, and that is, it's set to a very specific temperature, and the temperature doesn't vary, and so you get a nice even heat all the way through. The other function that we're going to use today is pressure cook, and so this is going to pressure cook similar to the pressure cooker that your grandmother probably had that you put on the stove, and that as dinner was being cooked, you heard it rattling around and hissing, and at any given moment it might end up on the ceiling if it exploded. These pressure cookers have a whole series of security and pressure alerts and heat alerts, and they'll shut down before anything can happen. So they're much safer. They don't make they make barely any noise at all. And so what ends up happening is that you end up being able to cook securely, and just basically you throw the stuff in. You'll see with the risotto more than this. This requires a little more handling because I'm trying to brown these onions, and it'll take a while. I mean, but they'll be a nice golden brown by the time I'm done with them. But so we end up cooking this, and I'm just looking. I may have forgotten to put the garlic in here. Yes. No, I didn't. No, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. Sorry. So anyway, so I'm just trying to keep stirring this around so that they don't burn. The one thing that you have to be aware of in using the Instant Pot is the sensors are so sensitive that if something sticks to the bottom, that you can end up getting a burn message on the front screen, and the Instant Pot shuts down. So you always want to make sure that you have enough of a either butter or oil. It doesn't take a lot, but there has to be something on there so that things don't stick to the bottom and scorch. Once they scorch, the system will just shut itself off, and you won't have to worry about that. Questions?
Rob, yeah, we do have another question. It's another mushroom question.
Another mushroom question.
Yes, the store sent Stacy to wood ear mushrooms. What are those? Do you know?
Yes.
And Stacy also says hello.
Hello. Hello, Stacy. Wood ear mushrooms are thin mushrooms. They're used a lot in Chinese cooking, and they look like ears. They're just kind of floppy and very thin. If you're using that in here, I'm sure it's going to be delicious. It'll taste a little different, but I'm sure it's going to be delicious.
That's awesome. I've never met a mushroom I didn't like.
Exactly. Exactly. So again, so you just want to keep an eye on this stuff, and you don't want it to burn. Once this reaches the ideal temperature, the ideal color, then what I'm going to do is throw the garlic in for 30 seconds, and then throw in the red wine, and I have the Worcestershire sauce in here as well. I didn't want to just have all these little containers if I didn't need it. So what that's going to do is reduce the temperature of the contents of the Instant Pot and stop it from burning, and then we're going to put the lid on and just let it do its thing. So okay, so in addition to the pressure cooking that's on here, there's a whole bunch of other settings, And most of the settings are just, most of the settings that are on here are just presets. So there's a meat and stew, there's a bean chili, there's a soup and broth. But these are all just preset times for the Instant Pot. So realistically, what you're going to use is saute to cook prior to pressure cooking. You're going to pressure cook. There's also a slow cooker on here. So if you wanted to convert your recipes to slow cooker, a lot of the recipe books both have slow cooking and pressure cooking. So you can use the books and use this as a regular slow cooker. On the other side, we have a rice setting, which is very convenient. You just throw the rice in the water and you push a button, you walk away, and then it will tell you when it's done. And we have multi-grain porridge. I can honestly say I have no need for the porridge button. And steam, which allows you to steam vegetables. There's less pressure than pressure cooking, but it'll heat up the water in the bottom. It comes with a rack, so you just put the vegetables on top. There's a yogurt setting. I read the recipes. It's far easier to go to Albertsons or Sprouts and get your yogurt there. And there's this particular one has something called sous vide. And sous vide is a method of cooking where the Instant Pot holds the temperature of a water bath at a very specific temperature. And then what you do is you put a plastic bag in there with a vacuum seal, if you can do it. Otherwise, you can use a Ziploc bag, and you put it in, and it cooks. And what happens is it'll take 3-4 hours sometimes, but it breaks the collagens down in the meats, and you get very, very tender meat and fish. We did, for Thanksgiving, my wife and I had lobster that I did sous vide, and it was just extraordinary. It was really, really good. So just continuing on this. Any other questions?
Not so far.
Not so far. So everybody's following along.
Everyone's following along. And if you're not, everyone, speak up now.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is, while this is starting, I'm going to get started on the risotto. And for the risotto, make sure I don't put the ingredients for the onion soup into the risotto. So I'm going to do the same exact thing on here. I'm going to turn on my saute function, and I want it to be on high. So I'm going to set this to more on here. And the way you do that is you just keep pushing the saute button, and it'll go from less to normal to more. We're going to set this up to more, and then I'm going to put a tablespoon of butter. And again, there has to be some sort of oil or butter or something in here, because you don't want the stuff to scorch or stick to the bottom. These are not non-stick, and I've also found that we had somebody buy in my class. Somebody bought the non-stick pot, and it didn't sit in the Instant Pot, and she had to take it back. It didn't sit properly in there. So this is going to melt, and then I'm going to put the onion in. Now, this particular onion I have cut into smaller pieces, but basically what's going to happen is that these this onion is just going to disintegrate in the risotto. You're probably not even going to see it when we're done. So the first thing I want to do is add the onions and saute them. I'm just waiting for the butter to melt. And again, if you have both of the recipes, if you're doing one of the recipes, or if you're just watching, you can feel free to make this anytime you'd like. Obviously, the risotto would go great at a Christmas dinner, so as a side dish, but you'd never think to do it because when you have Christmas dinner, you have way too many things to do. But you'll see that this really is very easy. And okay, so that's telling me I had that a little early, so I need just a couple more minutes to get this nice and brown. If they're nice and soft, they just need to get nice and brown. So what I was saying for the risotto is that you can make this for Christmas, and normally you'd never make risotto for Christmas because it's too difficult. You have to stand stirring over the pot for hours, but not this way, as you'll see. So I'm going to put my onions in here. And I will tell you that this saute function really is quite hot. There's no question about it. This is as good as anything you put on the stovetop. Okay. Okay. All right, so we're going to be using arborio rice for the risotto. This is the traditional Italian rice that's used. It is a short grain rice as opposed to jasmine or long rice or even medium rice from the US. And this has a lot of starch in it. That's how you get that nice creamy texture to it. Unlike regular rice, you're not going to rinse this at all. It's just going to go straight in the pot. So I'm going to now put the rice in. And what you want to do with the rice is you want to make sure that you stir it around and get the butter on all of the rice granules. With this, you want to make sure that you're pretty much stirring nonstop because you want to make sure that you're covering all of these granules with a little bit of butter. And you may start to notice that there's little brown spots on the bottom. And so now I'm going to take my wine. And I want to make sure again that I'm stirring everything up, that nothing is sticking to the bottom of the pan. Otherwise, you're going to get a scorch and it's going to stop cooking. The other problem with the old pressure cookers was that you never knew what you had until you opened up the pressure cooker. And so, you could cook something, and if all the liquid that's inside the pressure cooker cooked out, you could end up with a completely burned dinner and not know it until you're ready to put it on the table. That's not the case here. But what's also important is with any recipe that you get, what I had to learn with this is that you can't just wing it. You can't just decide to do whatever you're doing. I'm just going to put the 3 cups of stock in here now. You can't wing it. You really need to stick to the recipes as far as volume and liquid and the volume of food and liquid so that everything cooks properly. What I have found is that most recipes for the Instant Pot are under-seasoned. And so you may want to add additional seasoning to your recipes, but that's going to be after you're done cooking. So you're going to try it once. So what I've told everybody in my class was that you should never use your Instant Pot for the night that you're having all your friends over. You should make the dish first because you may want to tweak it. You know, a little more salt, a little less salt, whatever you want to do. So right now, I'm going to add the mushrooms. And I'm going to turn off the saute, and I'm going to turn the pressure cooker now. So I'm going to turn it off, hit the cancel button, put the lid on, and make sure that when you close it, you put it into the seal position. And from here, we're going to set the pressure cooker to, believe it or not, 4 minutes. And I'm going to turn the keep warm function off. I don't want it to keep cooking after it's done. So, okay, now we're starting to get some color.
Rob, we do have another question about mushrooms, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So, do we need to chop up the wood ear mushrooms for the risotto, or just toss them in there whole?
Well, keep in mind, if you don't chop up the wood ear mushrooms, then like there's going to be 4 or 5 or 6 big pieces, and the whole idea is that you want to get it with sort of every couple of bites that you have. So it's up to you. I mean, if you like to have a big piece of wood ear mushroom in there, that's great. If you cut it up into slivers, then it shows up in more places in the food that you're cooking.
Sounds good. So to have a more uniform dish, it's recommended to break them up.
Exactly. Okay. So this is just about ready now. It's like a medium blonde color. And so I am going to move on with this. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to add the garlic. Did I? No, sorry, wrong recipe. No? Did I? Oh, here it is. I'm looking for the garlic. I thought, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to add the garlic and let it cook for a little bit more. Now, it's important that you let this cook for just a little bit. You don't want the garlic to burn, but by the same token, you don't want just little bits of garlic that are uncooked, although they will cook because this is going to take a fair amount of time. Okay. Keep this. Okay, so I've got the garlic in here. And again, what's going to happen is as soon as I put the wine, the Worcestershire sauce, and the beef broth in here, the temperature of the food is going to go way down, and then I'm going to start my pressure cooking. So I'm going to add the red wine, the Worcestershire sauce, and it says a little salt and pepper. And this isn't your final salt and pepper. It's just a little flavor that's in here. So I really wouldn't worry about, did I put enough? Did I not put enough? You're just going to put a little in here. Okay. So this is going to cook for a minute or two. Did this go off? No, it's still cooking. There we go. Okay. So this is going to cook for another minute or two, and then I'm going to add the beef broth. And so I just bought Swanson beef broth and chicken broth for these 2 dishes. And there's been a lot of questions, and I'm surprised I haven't gotten the questions already. There's a lot of questions about what's the difference between broth and stock and bone stock. And so as soon as I pour this in, I will go over those 3. They're interesting. You didn't really hear about bone broth up until about 2 or 3 years ago, and now it's all the rage. Everybody has to have bone broth. But you'll see in a second that it's there's a lot of marketing that's involved in that. I'm not sure that there's any real validity other than feeling like you're really cool by having bone broth. Okay, so again, you want to make sure that nothing is sticking to the bottom. And what I'm going to do now is put this on for 20 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to cancel this, set pressure cook for 20 minutes. Now, it's going to take time in both cases, more in this one, and turn the keep warm function off. It's going to take more time in this one for it to heat up and build the pressure. Right now, you saw that I had turned this on. The pressure hasn't built up in here completely, so this isn't even started cooking. But I think we're good. So what's the difference between bone broth, stock, and regular broth? So first there's stock, which is what I purchased. I'm sorry, this is broth, which is what I purchased. Broth is made by simmering meat, which can contain bones but doesn't need to contain bones. So this may just be pure meat that they put in here. And it's mixed with celery, onions, and carrots, also known in French as a mirepoix. And it's usually cooked for under 2 hours. So it's a quick cook, but they're in large, heavy-duty pressurized canisters like this, except they're about 300 gallons instead of just this. And so what broth is, however, is it has seasoning in here. So they have put some seasoning. In this particular one, there's salt, natural flavoring, yeast extract, and cane sugar. So, and the beef stock, the beef broth contains beef stock, and then they've added the other items to it. So a beef stock, okay, is made by simmering animal bones, which may have scraps of meat on it, but that's not the main thing. And then it is cooked for 2 to 6 hours, as opposed to just being under 2 hours for broth. So it's cooked longer, and it's always left unseasoned. That's why it's the first ingredient in here. So you make the stock, and then you make the broth. And so this has a little bit more flavor. You can have this as a soup. You can add it to beef stew. You can add it to whatever you'd like. The beef broth, the bone broth, however, is different. It's made typically with just animal bones. And so the beef stock obviously is made with beef bones. The chicken stock is made with chicken bones. However, they can be combined. So you could have beef bone broth that has chicken bones in it, but the majority of it is beef bones. It's cooked for 12 to 48 hours. And so there's a lot more there's a lot more gelatinous content to it because it's got the bone marrow in it, and it is always unseasoned. So the difference again between the stock and the bone broth in this case is the bone broth is cooked longer, and there may or may not even be any meat in the bone broth. And then so it's cooked the longest of the three, and it does have vegetables but no seasoning. So I hope that answers everybody's hidden question about what they needed to know about beef stock, beef broth, and bone broth. Any questions?
Yeah, Rob, you kind of alluded to this at the beginning, but I wanted to know if you could share more of your background and how you got into cooking, and specifically how you got into cooking with Instant Pots.
Okay. About 100 years ago, I was a pastry chef in New York City. I fell into that, and I worked in a couple of big places in New York. And I really enjoyed it. I spent 5 years as a pastry chef, and I really enjoyed it. But there is a saying, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. And man, was it hot. So I changed careers, but I always enjoyed cooking. And then so I do a lot of baking and a lot of cooking. But the thing was with the Instant Pot is that I found that I had at home, I had an old-fashioned pressure cooker, and I had a slow cooker crock pot, and I could not see figuring out whether, I just want to make sure this is turning on and not off.
It just finished the 4 minutes.
Oh, it did finish the 4 minutes. Okay, so I will come back to my story in a second. Okay, so now what we're going to do here is what's called an instant release. And what that means is that I'm going to release the pressure that's in here quickly. On this particular one, we're going to do a natural release, which means that the unit will turn off and it will release the pressure over time. Usually, the natural release is reserved for meat, because what happens is there's a lot of pressure inside here, and anything that has meat in it, what happens is when you release the pressure quickly, the meat seizes up and gets very tough. So you always want, when there's chicken or beef or any other meat that's in here, you want to do a natural release. But on this one, I'm just going to let it release. And thanks to the air conditioning, I'm getting a little sauna action here. Okay. Okay. So, so I didn't want to buy another gadget, let alone 2 of them. And so what ended up happening was Costco had a big sale on them, and I thought, oh, I really should try this. So I brought one of the 2 of these home. I don't remember which. And I was just instantly enthralled about the ability to do all sorts of stuff. I made ribs the other night that were just unbelievably good. I think the whole thing took 30 minutes start to finish. And the thing about the Instant Pot is that you can cook quickly, and it's all hands off. So you just, like, if you think about what happened now to create this, very little. And so you can have this on the table in time, at a Christmas dinner or something like that, or a holiday party, with very little work. So you wait till the pressure is all the way out. The top will not come off until all that pressure is released. So if you try and take it off, it will not let you do it, but be careful, because the contents inside are hot. Ooh, and the top comes off. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is just stir this, and so, okay, so what I need to do is turn the saute function back on. Okay, so there we go. And so now I'm going to put the frozen peas, which are no longer frozen, in here. And even if they are frozen, the heat from the Instant Pot is going to be enough that it will defrost the peas and get them ready. Oops. Can't forget these last 2 guys. Okay. All right. And so, okay. So now what I want to do is I've turned the saute function on. So it's just going to cook for a little bit. Now at this point, while it's cooking, you want to make sure that it's not too dry at the bottom. And so I put in the 3 cups, and I usually find that the extra half a cup of chicken stock that goes in here, or the chicken broth, actually, if we're being specific, put the chicken broth. And so what happens is you just have to watch the bottom. Okay. And so I'm going to add a little bit more liquid in here. And then the last step when I'm done, so what I'm going to do in just a minute is turn this off, and it's going to sit for a little bit. And then I'm going to put the Parmesan cheese on, and I have extra, huh? No, Parmesan. Gruyere goes on here. Yeah, okay, great. So now, there we go. All right, so the last half cup goes in here. So if you think about all the time that I've had on here, I'm just going to shut this off. I'm just going to shut this off. And now we put the last half cup of the Parmesan cheese in. Okay. And now the magic. Okay. Okay, it says serve immediately. So I guess everybody's who's here is going to have a little. Silverware is. Do you have silverware?
In the drawers in the island.
Ah. Oh, I didn't see there were drawers. Look at that. Okay. You guys can use spoons for this. And so now here. Okay. So this here, do you want to? This is. Well, let me tell you something. If you don't think this is terrific risotto,
Thank you so much, Rob.
sure. Julie, would you like them? So this may not be the most traditional way to make it, but I think on a, there you go, on a, and when you balance out the time that it took and the result, any complaints? Okay.
You can't see me, everyone, but the risotto is delicious. What I'm having on my end is awesome. How is everyone's at home? Just let us know in the chat how it turned out for you, and if you have any questions.
Okay. All right, so we've got 20 minutes on here. It just started. It takes a while to 20 minutes. Okay, so it takes a while for anything like soup to heat up because there's a lot of liquid in here, but there's a lot of pressure that's inside here. And unlike the pressure cooker at your grandmother's house, this doesn't make any noise. Okay, so what always happens in my class is that people want to know where I get my recipes from. So you could do everything just by Googling Instant Pot recipes, and there are tens of thousands of recipes that are out there. The problem is that they have to be reputable. And so the way you figure out whether they're reputable or not is you have to see how many people like, say that they like, how many stars they give it. because they can vary dramatically. I've made recipes that are just completely wrong. But I have brought along a couple of books with me, and these are books that I recommend. And so let me just grab this one. So these are 3 books. I got all 3 of them off of Amazon. This is from the America's Test Kitchen, and all 3 of these books, I know everything's been tested. It's oh, I'm not on the frame there. Okay, everything's been tested. So everything's been tested, so you really don't have to worry. This is Melissa Clark. She is the recipe writer for the New York Times, and she's got some great stuff. You will not find anything that's in here on any other website anywhere around. Her stuff is just very unique. She uses a lot of interesting ingredients. There's Indian food, there's Italian food. It's a wide variety of stuff. I've made a bunch of stuff from here. There's barbecued chicken, there's seafood. And this really is, I guess, when you go past being a beginner and you want to really challenge yourself, and I wouldn't even say challenge yourself. The problem is that some of them have ingredients that are a little difficult to find, or you may have to go to an ethnic food store to get. This book is Pressure Cooker Perfection, and the nice thing about this book is that a lot of these recipes are also available for the slow cooker. So if you want to use the slow cooker function, you can. America Test Kitchen does some great products, and every single recipe in here is tested, and they'll tell you why this recipe works. That's how they start every recipe. Why does this recipe work? And what's also nice about it, and I know you probably can't see it, but in there, it's hard. There are all these charts for vegetables or rice. So for grains, for example, tells you how to cook sushi rice, arborio rice, medium grain white rice, long grain white rice, basmati, jasmine, texmati, short grain brown rice, medium grain brown rice. It goes on and on and on. Quinoa, farro, pearl barley, wheat berries, and then so this I find is a great resource for just sort of everyday cooking. The recipes are in here are great. I did the mac and cheese in here, amazing. It's 20 minutes start to finish, 5 minutes under pressure, as easy as can be. But everything that's in all 3 of these books has been thoroughly tested. As I said, though, that being said, a lot of times the recipes are bland, and so you may need to up the ingredients, the spices that are in your food, but you should never deviate from the quantities of food. So this one is fast and slow, and at the same time, it has recipes for the Instant Pot. It also has recipes for the slow cooker. So it'll say, if you go fast, it'll take you, set it to 3 minutes. If you go slow, it'll take you 4 hours, and so on and so forth. Again, these are not your run-of-the-mill recipes. Braised ginger chicken, caramelized carrot soup with fennel seed and cumin. They're not the run-of-the-mill recipes. But again, if you put it together with the stuff that you find on the internet, I think you'll find that the 3 books work really well. In fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the mushroom risotto is from here. I do know that it's a New York Times recipe. I'm not sure. Oh no, the saffron risotto here. So I highly recommend all three books. Um, don't don't buy the books that are on Amazon or wherever where it says 10,000 instant pot recipes, because they never check those things. Um, and so you really want recipes that work well and that you can get the results that you expect. Any questions?
Yeah, Rob. If you have some time, could you tell us a little bit more about the ribs, like how you prepared them, and were they short ribs or spare ribs?
The ribs, just trying to remember if they were, which book they were from. Yeah, no, they were spare ribs, but I forget which cookbook I used for it. Um, uh, there is a website called Amy and Jackie, Jacky, on the website, and I think that's where I got the recipe from. But you can just do instant pot pork ribs. Um, so what you do is, I use spare ribs, but you can use baby back ribs or St. Louis style ribs or any kind of ribs that you'd like. Um, and so when you get the instant pot, there's a rack that comes with it. You just put the rack in the bottom. You pour a cup of water at the bottom. Now the recipe that I used has a rub, but again, there are tons of recipes that are out there. It was a rub of paprika, salt, pepper, a very little brown sugar, and a little cayenne pepper. And so I did a rub on the ribs, and they sat for about 2 hours. And then inside the pot, at the bottom of the pot, there was water and, believe it or not, liquid smoke and apple cider vinegar. And it cooked for 25 minutes, I believe, and rested for 10. And then I opened up the Instant Pot and I tried to take the ribs out, and I had a pair of tongs, and they just pretty much fell apart. They were one step beyond um, falling off the bone. So I had them on a sheet pan, actually on this, and I put a little aluminum foil down. I put them on the pan, and I brushed them with a little barbecue sauce. I threw them under the broiler for 3 minutes, and then they were just fabulous. They were really, really good. And because of the liquid smoke, they had a little smoky flavor to them, and they were really wonderful. And I'm pretty sure that was the Amy and Jackie website.
And I shared the Amy and Jackie website
Oh,
with you
great,
all. So you'll see it in the chat box.
great. Okay, so we have 10 minutes left, and then there's going to be about a 10-minute. I'm going to let it rest for 10 minutes and do a natural release for 10 minutes. Then I'm going to set this up. I have Gruyere cheese. This, believe it or not, I got at IKEA. This is it's a grater box. It comes with two different grate sizes, and then you just grate it, and then it falls into the container, and so it works really well that way. And as long as you don't grate your knuckles, the results will be delicious. Okay. If anybody would like to come down here and make a donation and get some risotto, you can.
Yes, we are all for that here.
Yes, there's extra risotto. Okay. The other really nice gizmo that I have that I bought recently, I think this was about $12 or $13. This is a timer, and it's just a dial timer that I got. But what ends up happening is, in this particular case, right now the Instant Pot is going to count down. I have 9 more minutes, but I want it to rest for 10 minutes. So what I'm going to do is set this to 19 minutes. so that I know. So it's just actually here. There we go. So I'm going to start it right now. And so when the timer goes off, I know that the timer on here um, has passed and then it's rested for 10 minutes. The other question that always comes up is there's a keep warm function on here. And I always tell people to turn the keep warm function off. And most of the recipes will say, turn keep warm function off. So invariably people say, what's the keep warm function for? So if you're making rice, and this is one of the greatest things that the Instant Pot does, it's just amazing. For 2 people, I use 2/3 of a cup of jasmine rice, jasmine rice, and 1 cup of water. All I do is I rinse the jasmine rice off. I throw the 2 cups of, the 1 cup of water and the 2/3 of a cup of jasmine rice in, and I stir it around to make sure that all of the rice is wet. And I literally just push the rice button, which is a 12-minute timer. And if I leave the keep warm function on, then I can just keep going and not worry about it. And so I can set this up to start earlier than when I'm ready to serve dinner, and then the rice is all set. The other thing that these machines have is they have a time delay. So you can set them to wait an hour to start. One of the most incredible things that I find about the Instant Pot is that it helps me get an entire meal ready, because I know exactly how long the Instant Pot's going to run, so I know when to start my vegetables or when to start other things, so that everything comes out at the same time. But there is a time delay on here, and so you can set it for half hour or 45 minutes or an hour. Just be careful that when you're setting the time, especially if you have raw meat or shellfish, that you're not setting it for too far, so that that you have there's no chance of spoilage of the food that's in there, because it's going to sit on your counter at room temperature. And certainly in the summertime, it's more than room temperature in your kitchen.
Rob, we actually have another question.
Another question.
Yes. What is your take on air fryers?
Okay, so a couple of my friends have purchased the Ninja Foodie, which has the air fryer on top. Then there are other people I know who bought the air fryer as a separate appliance. The other thing that you can do is you can, for $79, buy an air fryer attachment for the 6-quart. So you can have this and then yet another contraption that goes on top, and it performs as an air fryer. I have found in watching a lot of videos on YouTube, and there are a ton of Instant Pot videos on YouTube. If they'll tell you everything from basic setup to what happens when this light goes on or that light goes on or whatever. But what I have found with instant fryers is that the best thing for the instant fryers is the if you have kids at home and you need to make French fries and chicken fingers and chicken wings and that kind of stuff, it does it really well, because it doesn't use any added oil. It just uses the oil that's on the food that when they process the food. But I've yet to be convinced that there's a reason for a household that has only adults in it, unless unless you like having chicken fingers all the time, that there's a need for it. If you're trying to cook healthy food, I don't really see it, but there's nothing wrong with it. I know a lot of people have them as separate gizmos, but they take up a lot of counter space.
I will say one of our members here has, who is a chef by training, has recently recommended the Ninja Foodie. And I was wondering, does it work in similar ways as the Instant Pot and the same settings and all of that for folks?
Similar settings, but it does come with the fryer on top, the air fryer. And the air fryer is deceptive. It's not really a fryer. It's more of a broiler, but it does crisp up chicken wings, and certainly you can actually start with frozen chicken wings and throw them in, and they'll be crunchy and you know crunchy, and then you just throw some barbecue sauce or whatever you want on them. If you're doing chicken wings in here, um, you can also start with frozen wings, and the problem is though that they have less of an appetizing look because they're not browned at all. So you get finished with them, and then you have to put them on a tray like I did with the ribs, and then stick them in the oven. So let's see, got 14 minutes. I'm going to turn the broiler on now so it gets nice and hot. There we go.
Rob, do you have a favorite dish that you've made in the Instant Pot, or something really unique that you've done that is unexpected?
I have to say the risotto is pretty unexpected. I think the results on that are just amazing. Um, the class that I just ran for 6 weeks, we did some great stuff. We did a New York style cheesecake, fabulous, fabulous cheesecake, um, and we may, maybe we can do it again and do that. That requires that you buy a springform pan that's 7 inches in diameter. And again, it's one of these recipes where it's no muss, no fuss. You make your shell. You do need a you do need a Cuisinart or something like that, a food processor, because it's going to grind up the graham crackers, and then it's also going to make the filling for you. But we made it 2 weeks ago, I think, and I got nothing but rave reviews, and it's a really solid New York cheesecake.
And Rob, if anyone wanted to join a future class that you were teaching, particularly at Ollie, can anyone join? And if so, where do they do that?
Okay, so membership at Ollie, you can join Ollie, and I will tell you that I'm not teaching in the spring in the classrooms, um, but I am doing. We have something called the Lounge, which is for members of Ollie, and we run programs just sort of ad hoc. And the reason I'm not doing it for in the semester is that over the course of 6 weeks, it was just a lot of work shopping and cooking and getting the recipes out for everybody. And so I'm going to be doing it once a month, one in January, one in February, one in March, and one in April. And I haven't decided on the menus yet. But if you are interested in joining Ollie, you can go to the website olli.arizona.edu, and you can find out how to join. Okay, so this is now done cooking, and the onion soup is completely done in here. We're just going to give it about 10 minutes to relax a little bit. And you'll see when I release the seal on here that you're not going to get the same shower of steam that we got out of the risotto. And the other thing that you can see is that for a lot of these recipes, they take very little time. I mean, you can come home and put something on the table in under an hour very easily. The biggest issue is, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but my class knows all about it, is you have to prepare yourself prior to putting everything in these Instant Pots. As you saw, sort of everything goes in at the same time. And so what has to happen is that you have to completely prep all of your vegetables and all of your food. And in French, this is called mise en place, means everything in its place. And so what you want to do is you want to get your onions cut and all your ingredients and your spices and everything measured out, because as the steps go through, everything goes into the pot very quickly. And so if you don't do that, and I have to say, what was I making the other day? Oh, I did the short ribs. I did short ribs in here. And I thought, well, this shouldn't be a problem. I have the short ribs have to brown for 10 minutes and I have plenty of time to cut up the onions. And I was chasing my tail the whole time, which further reinforced for me the importance of setting up your mise en place. Again, everything in its place. So you, like in this recipe, you get your onions peeled and sliced, you get the butter measured out, you get the brown sugar. Otherwise, you're going to be reaching in the cabinets and grabbing the wrong stuff, and you can't find this and you can't find that. So it's really important. Other questions?
Yes. If the risotto is wet upon opening the pot, should you saute it for a bit and then add the cheese?
Well, the instructions say to do that. So the instructions say that you you put when you open it up, you put the peas in and you start to saute it. And you turn saute on, you start to heat it up a little bit, and then you may need to add a little more chicken stock when you've sauteed it for a while. Then at that point, what you can do is you go ahead and you just add your cheese in there, and once the cheese goes in, everything, it coagulates and everything becomes perfect. And the reason I took it out of here is I didn't want it to continue heating. And although there's no heating coil in here, the inside of this pot, when you pull it out, is still very hot. As I said, there's no heating coil, but the magnet on the bottom gets hot. The bottom of the pot, this is stainless steel, this is stainless steel. And then on the bottom here, this is a very thick layer of steel, and that gets really, really hot. So also on cleaning these pots, it's really important that you do not use scouring pan, like SOS Brillo pads or anything like that. Always use a sponge with the nubbies on the back and some abrasive cleaner like Bartender's Friend or just SOS powder. But these pots are, the stainless steel on here is fairly thin. I mean, it's thick, but it's kind of soft, and you can end up scratching it. So again, always use plastic. Don't use anything metal inside.
Rob, we actually have a few more questions.
Sure.
Someone asked, why are you specifying unsalted butter? If you have regular butter, is it okay?
Good question. Okay. Have you ever used the broiler on this?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's working fine. I can smell the coils. I just wasn't sure whether you had never used it before. I promise I won't make a mess. Okay. Why do you cook with unsalted butter? Unsalted butter varies, the salinity of the butter varies by manufacturer, which means that you have no control over how salty the butter actually is. It can change by batch, it can change by manufacturer. And so by using unsalted butter, because when you bake, you always use unsalted butter, you can control the amount of salt that you put in. So I always recommend using unsalted butter.
Awesome. And just wanted to give you some positive feedback that we have here, that people are loving the class. They have so much confidence that they can actually cook. Great ingredients, terrific instructor, all good things.
Good.
And yeah, and then Connie made a comment and said that her manufacturer recommends soaking for 20 minutes with a little lemon juice in the bottom to remove stains in the pot.
Okay.
And then use a nylon scrubber and bar.
Yes, the nylon scrubber.
Yep.
The other thing is this. Where's my other top? Here we go. So the other thing is this. The gasket that's inside here is rubber. And I would imagine at some point in time that it needs to get replaced. I mean, I've been cooking for 1.5 years and it doesn't. You should take it out from time to time and really scrub it down carefully. And if it smells, which it will, what you can do is put this into a soaking pan with water, and the technical term for the amount of white vinegar you should put in there is 1 to 2 glugs of white vinegar. That's a very technical cooking term. 1 to 2 glugs of vinegar, and you let it soak for an hour or two, and then dry it off and put it inside here. However, these come with 2 different gaskets, and there's a red one and a white one on the Instant Pots. It may be different from some of the other manufacturers. And I have in the past switched them out when I'm doing sweet things. So for creme brulee or for the cheesecake, I take them out. But I got lazy once or twice and made the cheesecake with the stinky gasket in here, and it's not imparted into the food. I think I answered the question.
Yes, for sure.
Okay. So, there should have been parsley on the top of you. I apologize. There should have been parsley on the top of your risotto. Okay, well, next time. Okay, so I'm gonna call this a done deal and release the hounds here. Please be very careful. The steam that comes out of here is very hot. Okay, so that smells good. And again, if I tried to take the lid off right now, it wouldn't let me because there's too much pressure. There's a float valve right next to it. And until that float valve goes down, it will not let me take that top off. And unlike your grandmother's pressure cooker, it will not explode in your kitchen.
Thank goodness then for that feature, right?
Exactly. I got these. These are just onion soup crocks. You can get these. There's a great restaurant supply place on Campbell, just south of Broadway, on the west side of the street, called Standard Restaurant Supply, and they're open to the public. I think these were $1.99 each. Okay. Alrighty. So here's your onion soup. And so I am going to try not to spill it on me. If you're wondering what that light is, we have some motion sensor lights in here, and I guess we're just not moving around enough because the lights turn off.
Yeah, the sensor's in a different part of the of this area, so we keep walking back and forth. But that's a benefit with COVID these days, that we don't have to touch any light switches.
Okay. I'm hoping everybody can still see. Okay. So I have the ramekins. You can use ramekins. You can use the crock if you want. I took some baguette and toasted it. First batch burnt badly, so I had to make a second batch. And then, oh, you know what? You don't have an aluminum foil, do you, by chance?
We do. Yeah, let me grab it for you.
Because I did this the last time, and it took me like a really long time to get the.
We actually have so much foil.
Ah, excellent.
Yeah.
I just forgot the last time. Because the cheese just adhered to the. Okay. Okay, and so there's no such thing as too much cheese. If you don't have Gruyere, you can use Jarlsberg. Both Jarlsberg and Gruyere are available at Costco, among other places. Okay, I am not going to put this on the top because this looks like it's going to incinerate anything on the top shelf there. Don't go too far, otherwise you will have a molten mess of burnt cheese and soup.
Rob, how many minutes would you recommend, or how long do you think people should wait? Just keep an eye on it for the cheese.
Oh yeah. I've never used this stove before. I've never seen this stove in my life before. And so therefore I'm not giving it any, I mean, you know your own stove, but I'll show you what it's supposed to look like unless of course I burn it.
Perfect. So just keep an eye on it, everyone. And here at La Suprema, we actually have a smaller stove oven situation. So Rob's being a champ and working with what we have.
Yeah, well, that's fine. Okay. So what you want is the cheese to melt and then get a little brown without getting black. And then you'll be ready. And then we have some more spoons. And I will warn those in the immediate vicinity that the soup will be very hot. Yes, it is. Also, just make sure that when you put something in for that, the crocks or the ramekins are oven safe. You don't need anything blowing up. Okay. So while we're just waiting, any last questions? Because we're just about done, but I'm happy to answer any other questions.
We don't have any other questions in the chat, but I would like to know, do you have any holiday recipes that you're planning on making in your Instant Pot this year, Rob?
I can't say. Well, not in the Instant Pot, but yes, there will be some festivities, but I'm more of the last minute planner kind of guy. So, all right, these should be done in just a second.
And everyone, we're getting a few questions on how we can donate. So I'm going to share the link in the chat right now. So again, it's to an organization called IMU 360. And they work with homeless youth in Tucson. Oh, that link didn't go through. Great, you guys. So let me pull up a new one for you. So they're an amazing organization. They do life skills development. And they're working on a tiny house project right now to be able to house our vulnerable youth. And if you're in Tucson and you want to drop off personal hygiene items for the organization, you can do so and you can come to La Suprema Works. Our address is 319 West Simpson Street. And I'll be here all day tomorrow to accept those during business hours, 9 to 4.
Okay, so that concludes the two dishes, the onion soup and the risotto. I hope everybody's had fun. I know I have, and again, if you are interested in joining Ollie, I believe you posted the website.
I sure did. The link is in the chat, everybody. It's ollie.arizona.edu if you want to join that. And if you'd like to donate, again, the link is in the chat as well. And Rob and I'll stick around if you have any more questions. But everybody, thank you so much for coming today. It's been really fun to shoot cooking classes from our co-working space. And this is a little sneak peek. You can see in my video what it looks like in the background. So if you're ever curious and you're in Tucson, feel free to come visit. I'm always here Monday through Friday during business hours. So you'll either meet me or our intern, Kat Cabrera, who's here today too. She's been helping behind the scenes.
Yes,
so
thank
a
you
big
both.
shout out to her for all of her help.
Well, she's getting well fed. So.
Yeah, so yeah, we are. Yeah, just so everyone knows, we are getting bowls of soup and risotto as we go. So yeah, it's delicious. Thank you, Rob.
Sure.
So much for doing this. We
Great.
really appreciate you. And thank you everyone for joining. This has been an awesome time. Rob, we're just seeing lots of great feedback. Everyone having a great time.
Super.
And we have a request to see the final soup. So Kat's gonna show us, everyone. Voila.
I probably could have left it in there another minute or so, but it's set to nuclear power, and I'm just afraid that it would have just incinerated. So.